I'm here to tell you a story, a real-life lesson that I learned about a high-performing team. And this is a story about how this team came together to support me to ride that bicycle across the United States in 11 days. And the DNA of the team that helped me, 11 volunteers, had great chemistry, and they trusted each other. This team learned how to persevere through incredible hardship, but also learned to respect their own limits and their own boundaries. They showed gratitude toward one another, and they honored each other's roles and took ownership of their jobs. But more importantly, they learned how to forgive each other, because even the best teams make mistakes, and learning to forgive and move on was one of the critical elements of this team. And finally, I firmly believe that nothing can beat a team that believes in its mission. So those are the deliverables that I'm going to share with you today in this story. Those are the take-home values. But to get there, I have to take you to the beginning, take you to the start. It's January 2002. I had just gotten back from a 2-week vacation with my family. You can see in the picture, it's my wife Elizabeth. We've been married 18 years. My daughter Vienna, who was 4. There's my son Matt, who's 9 years old. And we had spent 2 weeks visiting family, and I'm back at work, and I'm buried. We all know what it's like when we're gone for 2 weeks. Let me tell you a little bit about my company. My company is called Milestone Communications. I build and own wireless cell towers. I build them on schools. In fact, if you've been to a high school in Fairfax County and you looked at the football field, you've probably seen one of my towers. They generate revenue. My investors love it. We give them a current return on their capital. I know a lot of you here are involved in raising money and deploying money and expanding your businesses. But it's a great organization, great business. We partner with schools and local governments, and we build these towers. And I'm back at my desk, and I got a stack of mail. I've got emails to respond to, conference calls, and the phone rings. And it's my son's doctor, Dr. Evers. And he called, and he said, "Len, I need you to take Matt out of school, and I need you to bring him into my office right now." Now, Matt had been in for some typical blood work earlier in the day, and I thought, Matt, he'd been sick a lot. He'd been missed a lot of school. So I said to him, "Dr. Evers, would it be okay if I brought Matt in toward the end of the day, around 3 o'clock when school's over? I don't want him to miss any more school." And he said, "No, you need to bring him in right now." So I called Elizabeth. She picked Matt up, and we met at Dr. Evers' office at McLean Pediatrics, not very far from here. Now, for those of you that have kids or remember when your kids were young, they split the lobby in the pediatrician's offices between the sick children and the well children. Which door do we go through? We hadn't been told. We had no idea why we were there. So we go in. They quickly take us to an exam room, and he examines Matt, and then he says, "Matthew, would it be okay if I talk to your mom and dad in my office just for a few minutes? Would you mind sitting in the lobby?" And he said, "Sure." So he sat down. We walked into his office. He closed the door, and that was the moment that he told me and my wife that my son had leukemia. And next thing we know, we're driving back home to get a backpack with pajamas and getting ready for a long stay at Inova Hospital. And we're driving to Inova Hospital, and for those of you that have been there, there's a sky bridge that connects the parking deck to the children's wing. And we're walking across the sky bridge, and in Matt's left hand, he's holding what was a small statue of St. Matthew, which my mom gave him for his first communion. And that was the moment he looked up to me, and he asked me if he was going to die. And we're looking at these big steel doors leading into the hospital. The parking garage, that's our old life, our old world. And now we're in this tunnel, this bridge over an abyss. And we're traveling through this tunnel, and we don't know what the other side looks like. And that's what it's like. when you've just learned that you've got to deal with a beast called cancer. Now, for the next 11 days, we're in the hospital, and for the next 6 months, Matt's not going back to school. He's going through a very scary 2.5-year window of cancer treatment. And it's frightening, and it's lonely. You take a child that's 9 years old and take him out of his school environment. I mean, at the most critical time in his life, when he needed his friends the most, he couldn't be there. He couldn't be with them. And the loneliness that we saw, I wanted to do anything in my power as a parent to help him. This is a picture of Matt when we left the hospital. During this time, he's going through a lot of transitions. The chemotherapy makes his hair thin. He's got sores in his mouth. This is just an awful time, and he's lonely. I wanted to do something to help him connect with his friends at school. So I talked to the school, and I asked him if we could put a web camera in the classroom and one in our home so he could have a dialogue with his friends. Now, for those of you that remember 2002, there was no Skype, there was no FaceTime. It was this crazy software called Net Meeting, which we got for free. But we got so lucky, we were able to find someone in the technology department at a school who wanted to help us. And we made this connection. And you should have been in the room when those two cameras clicked on. And he could see his friends, and they could see him. The smiles in the room. And so during this time period, Matt loses his hair. His friends saw that. They were with him. His face, as you can see, starts to balloon up from all the steroids. His friends saw that. They're with him during the journey. Those 26 kids in Forestville Elementary School's 4th grade class are with my son as he's going through this process. And he felt that he wasn't abandoned. He felt that he wasn't alone. And it was just absolutely amazing. Over the summer, his hair grew back. He goes back to school in September. He walks into the classroom. His hair's back. They're rubbing his hair for good luck because they knew what happened. They saw what happened to him. They got it. And I thought, this is just too good not to share. So we started a charity, and we called it Hopecam. We gave it the name Hopecam because we wanted to send a really clear message to these children. It's not a matter of if you're going to go back to school, it's when. But back then, we had a problem. In 2002, a laptop cost over $1,000, and these cameras that you clip onto the computers, the good ones, were at least $100. So we needed to raise money. We needed to find a way to bring revenue to this. Now, at the same time, I started exercising more to cope with the stress of his illness. And I started running more. I'd done some short triathlons, but I started doing more and more volume. Started running marathons. And a good friend of mine at the Reston Runners told me about this race in Maryland. It's called the JFK 50. It's the oldest 50-mile ultramarathon in the United States. It starts in Boonesboro, Maryland, and it ends just outside of Hagerstown. So I decided to sign up for this race. And I emailed everyone I knew, and I asked them to give me a dime a mile, $1 a mile, whatever they could give. And next thing you know, I crossed the finish line in about 10 hours, and I raised $5,000, and I formed this charity, and now we can have enough money to go buy 5 computers. We bought the computers, we went back to the clinic where he was being treated, and we signed up 5 kids, and we connected those children. And that's how we started in 2002. Every year, I do the race again. We'd raise more money. I do it next year. I raised $10,000. The next year, I raised more money. Then I started doing triathlons. This is my daughter, Vienna, crossing the finish line with me at an Ironman. Now, for those of you that know about Ironman, it's a 2.5-mile swim, a 112-mile bike, and then a marathon to top it off for fun. And I did this race, and now I've raised $30,000 doing Ironman triathlons. Now we've got enough money to be able to hire a part-time coordinator, and now we're helping over a dozen children a year. And again, I do more and more races. I did 5 of these Ironman races and continue to raise more and more money to help support the charity. A good friend of mine named Bill Sickenberger had told me about this bicycle race in Florida. It's called the Sebring 400. I guess you know where I'm going with this, right? 400 miles in 24 hours. So we did this race, and I raised $75,000, and now we've got enough money for a full-time director, and we're helping 2-3 dozen children a year. So we had this wonderfully beautiful spiral. The more that I would put out, the harder I'd press myself, the more resources would come toward the charity. And that's kind of how we kind of got going. We learned after doing this race that I had qualified for a bike race that's been going on for 31 years. It's called Race Across America. Race Across America is a bike race that it involves people from all over the world, and it's been going on, like I said, for over 30 years. Now, this race starts in Oceanside, California, and it goes all the way to Annapolis, Maryland. But the catch is you have to finish this race as a solo rider in 12 days. There's another race that many people have heard of called the Tour de France. And the Tour de France is 2,000 miles. They give you 22 days to do the Tour de France. So this race is 1,000 miles longer than the Tour de France in half the time. But the problem is there's no easy way to do this. You have to figure out how to get yourself across the country. Now they have some sessions with the race director that will help give you ideas on the kind of crew you need and so forth, the resources. But it's like the equivalent of trying to climb Mount Everest, except when if you want to climb Mount Everest, obviously you have to have some skills, you have to have some practice and have done other mountains. But mostly, you show up at base camp, you write a check for $75,000, and they take you up the mountain and they take you back down, hopefully. They bring the Sherpas, they figure out how much oxygen, they figure out what kind of tents you need. All that is at the arrival point. With Race Across America, you have to figure everything out yourself. Now to do this, I interviewed over a dozen people that had either done the race before or had been on a crew for one of the racers or had been associated with the race, like the race director. And I asked them, what is the most important thing that I should know as a rookie? Because the record, the history, the 31-year history, half the people that start this race don't make it to the finish. And only a third of the first-time riders get to the finish line. So the odds are stacked against me. So I'm trying to do as much research and homework as I can. And I was absolutely amazed what they said. I thought they were going to tell me, you got to have this kind of bicycle. Or you have to train a certain way. Or you have to have this type of nutrition. It was none of those things. Everyone said the exact same thing. It's your team. The crew that comes with you, that supports you, will make you or break you. You have to have the right type of people on your crew, on your team to support you. Because, let's face it, you cannot do this race alone. So I started the process of recruiting a crew. I started with one of my best pals, John Moore, who I picked as my crew chief. We had done a number of Ironman races together. I needed navigators. We're going, the route that you have to take to do Race Across America, it's in a book, the maps, this thick. Every single turn is in the book. You have to follow the route precisely. You need to have people that can read the maps, read the Garmin, drive the car, and get you there. So we needed to have people that could navigate. We needed people that could do anything, like people that would be willing to go buy ice, to empty the waste tank in the RV, shop, do laundry, that kind of thing. We needed a bike mechanic. I'm going to be riding my bicycle for 20 hours a day. At the end of the day, the bolts on this bicycle are going to start to come loose. I needed someone that could take a look at my bike, make sure everything was straightened out, tightened down, so that I could ride for the next day. I needed a massage therapist. Let's face it, at the end of 20 hours, things are going to start coming apart on me. I'm going to start coming loose. So I needed someone that could work on me for 2 hours a night and help put me back together and help me continue and be ready for the next day. We needed a paramedic. Fairfax County gave us two firefighters. One of them was a paramedic. We were 500 miles from an emergency room when we were crossing over a Navajo reservation area. God forbid something would happen to me or one of my teammates. We needed to make sure we were prepared. We had good medical support, someone that could triage us. We needed to have a nutritionist who could measure every ounce of liquid, every ounce of solid food that would go into me every hour to make sure that I was not going to bonk. I wasn't going to be metabolically, physically correct. So we had a nutritionist that helped with that. And then we had people that would communicate for us. We had a blogger that would write to our web pages to communicate with our people that were following us during the race course. And then we brought along a videographer to visually capture the whole experience. So what we found in the selection of these people was we needed 3 criteria. We needed people with positive attitudes, we needed people that were completely selfless, and we needed people that had the appropriate skills. In that order. When you think about your businesses and your organizations, what is the common denominator that you're looking for? You can teach skills. You cannot teach empathy and selflessness and positivity. There were a lot of people that wanted to be on my team that I interviewed that wanted to be a part of it, but they were missing A or B, and we didn't take them. And we held firm to that to make sure, because let's face it, this is a 15-mile-an-hour moving caravan camping trip. After 4 or 5 days, people are going to get tired. What happens when you get tired? You get cranky. And when you get cranky, you have to be able to pull back and think about the team and not think about yourself. So in many instances, we had 11 people volunteering to do something really, really hard against all the odds. Reminds you of a scene you've seen, except with different characters. So if you'll allow me, I'm going to take you through the start and the finish of the race and give you the lessons that we learned each day. So here I am at the starting line. Now, up to this moment, this was the most exhilarating moment for me, because 9 months of planning, training, fundraising, recruiting, logistics, all of that melted away. When I got on my bicycle and I started riding, I didn't have to think about any of that, because I took all the trust that I had and I gave it to my crew. And I was only going to do one thing: pedal the bicycle. At work, my team back in Reston, Virginia, I had to hand over the reins to my company to my team at home, my team at work. You've got to trust your people. I'm not taking conference calls on this bike ride. I'm not responding to email, although I tried once. But for the most part, I had to trust them to run the organization. And so the most important lesson I learned on day one was high-level leader. To achieve the next level in leadership, you have to trust your team, and you cannot move on to higher-level tasks unless you trust your team. And I did, and I trusted them with my lives. Our first challenge was crossing the Mojave Desert. We're going to be in the Mojave Desert for 30 hours. We're going to see headwinds blowing straight at me at 20 miles an hour. And we're going to see temperatures of 120 degrees. It's so hot in the Mojave Desert that if you stand still on the pavement for more than a couple of minutes, the bottom of your sneakers start to melt from the heat from the ground. That's what the Mojave Desert's like. For those of you that are cyclists and have ever tried to ride into a 20-mile-an-hour headwind in the hottest place in the country at the hottest time of the year, a headwind feels like someone's got a rope around you and they're pulling you backwards. I'm going half the speed that I'm supposed to go in this 20-mile-an-hour headwind. And then this is when I started to develop these nasty little things called saddle sores. I don't like to talk a lot about saddle sores. They're about the size of quarters, and they're in a place that you can't see. And if you can imagine riding for 20 hours a day with saddle sores, just imagine running a bunch of marathons with with blisters on your heel. That's what it feels like. And they started to develop on this day. On this day, we were racing for a young lady named Jessica. Jessica was a second-grade student. She lived in Ghana. She had just moved to the United States. And 3 months after she came to the United States, she was diagnosed with liver cancer. So all the children her age that she knows are in her classroom. And we connected her with the Hopecam. And on this day, I called Jessica's family, and I talked to her. And I said, Jessica, today, I told her where we were and where we were going. I said, today we're riding across the desert, and my crew and I are thinking about you and how tough you are and how brave you are. And we're dedicating our ride today for you, Jessica. And that's what inspired our team. You want to talk about creating a mission? Wrap your crew around a mission like Jessica, and they perform, and that's what we did. And so every day we did that, and we made it through the desert. It wasn't easy and it wasn't fun, and we couldn't control those headwinds. But when you can't control things, what do? You learn to adapt. And sometimes in business, when we've got headwinds, when the government shuts down, or the government does something we don't expect, or whatever is in our environment, the challenges that you all face every single day in your businesses that you have no control over, what do? You have to adapt, and you have to realize that brighter days are coming. And that's what we learned in the Mojave Desert, and we got through it. And eventually, the course changed direction. That headwind became a tailwind, and it pushed me toward Arizona, and things got better. And that's what happened for us on the second day. We're starting in a place called Mexican Hat, Utah, and it's named after this rock that looks like a hat. This is Katie DeMonte. She's my massage therapist. Now remember, I told you I've got a massage therapist that's working on me for 2 hours every night. So I'm coming in around maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and Katie's responsible for working on me for 2 hours. Now there's two things that are going to happen. I'm going to get water on my knees from all the pedaling, and I'm going to get a stiff neck. And of course, I'm still going to have, lactic acid building up my legs. There's a condition that I did not want to get. It's called Schirmer's neck. It's named after Michael Schirmer, one of the first guys to do this race. It's when all the muscles in your neck collapse, and you literally can't hold your head up. You effectively become a rag doll after riding your bicycle. The only way that you can finish the bike race is to wear one of those cervical collars that you see people that have whiplash, and it's not fun wearing one of those going down a 30-mile-an-hour descent. I did not want to get Schirmer's neck. I woke up in Mexican Hat, Utah, and my neck is stiff, and there's water on my knees. And I'm thinking, how could this be? If Katie's working on me for 2 hours every night, how could I have a stiff neck? Well, our bike mechanic, Wayne, became really friendly with Katie. And they spent a lot of time together, which I totally encouraged. But I was wondering, well, maybe at night, because at night, most of my crew are sleeping, except for Katie and Wayne. Wayne's working on my bike, Katie's working on me. And I thought, well, maybe Katie doesn't really understand how important her job and her role is. So I had all day to think about it as I rode my bike, about what to do, what to say. So when I rolled in to our next station stop, usually I'd come in around 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. My crew would hand me a hot plate of food, and I'd eat it, and I'd sit on the bed, and then she'd start working on me. And when she came over, I said, Katie, come over for a second. I want to talk to you. She sat down. I said, Katie, I'm not going to make it to the finish line without you. Absolutely no way. What you do when everyone else is asleep and I'm asleep is so critical to the success of our team. All I know is that when I wake up in the morning, I feel ready to get on the bike and ride again. I want to thank you for volunteering. I want to thank you for being part of my team. And I know that when we cross the finish line, your work is going to be a key factor. That is not what I wanted to say to Katie DeMonte. But as a leader, sometimes you have to honor people's jobs and express gratitude. Hey, I've only got one massage therapist, so I've got to do this right. And that was what motivated Katie. And I can tell you this, after that, I never had to say another word. And she took ownership of her job. And think about how often we have people on our team that aren't performing to their potential, and we think about the things they're doing wrong and the things that we want them to do and how we communicate that. And sometimes resetting the goal of the mission is the most important way to express and help them get back on track. So now we're going through Colorado, and it's absolutely a beautiful sunny day, and we're going to a place called Wolf Creek Pass. Now, Wolf Creek Pass is the top of the Continental Divide. It's a little bit less than 11,000 feet. And this day we're going to be riding through high elevation of going over mountain passes between 7,000 and 11,000 feet, over 6 different mountain passes. I'm going to be on the bike for 20 hours, and it's going to take a big toll on me. On this particular day, we're riding for Alex Green. Now, Alex Green is a young man who lives in not far from Gainesville, and he has a type of cancer called Wilms tumor. Wilm's tumor occurs in the pancreas and the lungs and the liver. And he'd been fighting this for a couple of years, and we connected him. He went in for surgery to remove some of the tumors, and he got a lot of radiation to shrink those tumors. And unfortunately, the radiation had weakened the walls of his aorta. So during surgery, the surgeons accidentally cut his aorta. And for 45 minutes, he had no blood flow to his legs. And when he woke up, he was paralyzed. And I called Alex Green. And I told Alex Green that we're riding through the mountains in his honor. And this was one of the most brutal days on a bicycle that I've ever experienced. I never had trouble climbing. I like climbing. It was the descents. So we're taking on Wolf Creek Pass. It's 65 degrees at the base. It's 34 degrees at the top. And I've got to go up 4,000 feet and then back down. I finally crested the Wolf Creek Pass at around midnight. My RV was waiting for me at the top. I put on 3 layers of clothes. I went back on the bike, rode for a few minutes, came back, put on another layer of clothes because I'm going downhill at close to 30 miles an hour. I'm going downhill in the middle of the night in total darkness, down 8% grade in steep switchbacks, going 30 miles an hour, and I fell asleep. And I opened my eyes, and there's a guardrail. And I'm grabbing these brakes and holding on for dear life as I'm slowing down the bike. And obviously, because I'm still here, I missed that guardrail. Now, I don't know why I woke up. I think it might have been Alex Green. It might have been my guardian angel. But I survived Wolf Creek Pass. And I finally made it to South Fork, this little town. It was about an hour and a half away. 2 o'clock in the morning, I started my day at 6. 2 o'clock in the morning, I rolled into South Fork. My knees had swollen to the size of grapefruits. And my crew put me down on the bed, and they propped duffel bags underneath my legs, underneath my knees. So I'm sleeping like a Z. This part of my leg, my shins are this way. They put 5 pounds of ice on both my knees to get the swelling down. And I was asleep in about a